Hello friends, welcome back to The Fallout. It has returned, and if you look closely, you'll be able to see something on my right hand shoulder, like this one there. And you'll be like, what is that say? But if you're an Arsenal fan, it'll look like this, because something is happening here. Arsenal seem to want it that little bit more. Arteta seems to have all the answers right now. And in this video, we're going to talk about Pep and how he has created his own downfall, the monster of Arteta. So this was one of the most important game weeks in the Premier League this season. The ripple that some of the results over the weekend has caused could well be what decides where certain teams finish in the table. You can feel that momentum change. Often you do, and often there are a lot of different reasons for it, and that's exactly what we're going to dive into in this video. In this video, we're going to look at why some of the performances by Premier League teams may just have solidified their seasons or damned them even further. And we're going to tell you why as well. Brighton 2, Arsenal 4, the XG 1.17 to 2.93. Arsenal feels like they can do it all right now. 4 amazing goals by Arsenal saw them dispatch Brighton, who are also, a good side. They crafted some really well put together attacks. But Arsenal's men in form in particular were just simply too much for a really strong Derby side. There is so much to unpack when it comes to this game because of how different the goals were. But first, we're going to talk about Arsenal's structure and how they enabled themselves to do this and make this all happen in this game after what's been a fantastic Christmas period for them. Now, Martinelli is a key man, especially right now with Jesus out of the side. And when it comes to Arsenal structure, he's absolutely huge, possibly the most important player, actually, because you can see from the average positions just how high up he is. Now, he looks like he's a little bit isolated, but he's not. There's a reason for this. Firstly, Brighton played with a flat back four against Arsenal, and you had Lamptey at right back. Now, Lamptey is a really good player, and he's proven himself to be good enough at the level. But Arsenal, they really exploited him during the 90 minutes, with Martinelli staying high, staying wide, and Lamptey often having a sort of reluctance to go out to challenge him. And it allowed Arsenal an easy option into the final third when they were counter-attacking. Brighton tried to keep their defence compact in an attempt to limit the half spaces, but this meant that Martinelli repeatedly found himself in space when he was receiving the ball, as I said, high and wide. And that subsequently, it allowed him to receive just numerous progressive passes. Martinelli received 8 progressive passes during the match, most of any player on the pitch. And the movement of Martinelli, it allowed the orchestrators of the team, Odegaard and Saka, who actually was a bit deeper than he's been earlier in the season. You see games when Jesus is playing, Saka's actually been really high up as well, but he was dropping in to help sort of knit together, I guess, nice pieces of interplay with the knowledge that they always had that outball to Martinelli. And because of this, Odegaard repeatedly found space in the final third and put in one of the individual performances of the season. Something that has gone really under the radar due to the overall brilliance of Arsenal and their performance is him. His goal, his assist, they were things of absolute beauty and just peak examples of intellectual football. The guy's so smart. The presence of mind to use the right technique and the skill to execute it and the vision and the awareness to see where it all is and how that picture of the pitch, they were all present for Odegaard's assist for Martinelli's goal. It was a really special pass that weirdly you don't see that kind of directness, but he just cut through the nonsense and played a great pass. But if Martinelli's not making those runs, then it doesn't happen either. Odegaard's overall stats against Brighton: key passes 3, big chances created 2, long ball success rate 100%. Now, these are the types of stats. These are the things that we see regularly when it comes to De Bruyne, and Odegaard is slowly reaching that level. And in my opinion, he is knocking on the door. You could just about, put him underneath it right now. I don't know if underneath the door, but you know what I mean. He's just, he's close. Is he world class? If he's not already, he's getting very, very close. And this isn't the only time that he's performed like this, this week. Boxing Day, the performance against West Ham was also just an insight into just how on form he is at the minute. And also, look, 2 big chances created in that game, 5 key passes. His overall stats this season are an absolute joke. You got 15 appearances, 7 goals, 5 assists, 10 big chances created. It's his player of the season material. The problem is, Haaland's already got that one sewn up, but Odegaard cannot be slept on. The guy is really special and is a leader in a different way for this Arsenal side. Your gut suggests that Arsenal will fall off, but when you start to look at the table, this is actually when you look at, say, how Leicester have done it in terms of teams that we didn't expect to go and win a title. The Christmas period is a crucial one, and when you kind of get those points and then your rivals start to drop them, it adds that new layer of belief. Now, there's a long, long way to go, and you would imagine when these things tail off, it's normally February, March, where the pressure just gets that little bit too much. But if you can get Jesus back between now and then, as I said, something is happening here for Arsenal, because they've got this nice juicy gap in the table as well right now. Arsenal, despite bossing this game, Brighton were also impressive in spells, and they demonstrated that De Zerbi has them playing an exciting brand of football, which it makes them one of the most enjoyable sides to watch, in my opinion. One player in particular who's been really aesthetically pleasing has been Kaoru Mitoma. Now, viewers of the channel will remember, surely, we hyped up this guy. We hyped up Mitoma before he had a Premier League goal or assist to his name, because we were excited about the performances. And since then, he's been outstanding for Brighton, but he's also been really good in the World Cup as well. And his goal against Arsenal, and he had one, of course, chalked off as well, it was a glimpse of how good he is when he's given that opportunity. He is slowly becoming one of the top 2-3 players for Brighton, up there alongside Trossard. And before people laugh at that, people scoffed when we said he was decent. So Mitoma is one that you've got to keep an eye on. And, we're talking about Caicedo, we've spoken about Basuma, we've spoken about all these players over the years for Brighton that are starting to jump up to the top teams and playing Champions League football. Mitoma, I think, is in that bracket. As you guys know, Man City dropped points again. Man City drawing 1-1 against Everton, 1.79 XG to 0.09 for Everton. Look, Everton didn't create a lot. And actually, that is a talking point. I do wonder how you guys feel about this. When it comes to how teams are even, addressing a football match against Man City as opposed to Arsenal, there is difference in that. Do you think that it is harder for Man City because literally they have 11 men they've got to break down every time, and there are moments and pockets of space because teams think that they've got that little bit more of a chance against Arsenal? Is that making life harder for Man City, or is that unfair to say because, you're getting to spend 70% of the game in the opposition's half, so all you've got to do is break them down once or twice and you've got the victory? Let me know how you're feeling about that one, because I do think that matters, how teams play against them. I think we saw it. I think Liverpool fans will jump on this one because they will have seen that last year. But in terms of dropping points, Man City are struggling to break teams down. And Pep, I don't want to do it, but you have to. Pep was overthinking again, and the forwards ran out of ideas. Man City got done in this game, to be honest. It really is that simple. Experimenting with a new setup is all well and good, and it needs to be done. And when it works, like against Leeds, it's great. But when it doesn't work, and often it doesn't always work, then you're going to drop points. And this was a prime example of it. The average positions here are really interesting from a City perspective, because City on paper started lined up with a 4-3-3 with a back four that consisted of Lewis, Stones, Akanji and Ake. But in game it became more of a 3-3-1-3 formation, which whilst is satisfying to look at, when you're a football nerd and you go, hang on a minute, that right back's just gone and played centre midfield. It didn't actually work all that well. Now, I get why he started that way, because Rico Lewis was fantastic in the Leeds game. And Rico Lewis' positioning was interesting, actually, because as part of this tactical setup, he often came into midfield, which we'd seen in that Leeds game, and picked up very good positions unmarked with a lot of space. But City didn't always make the most of the positions he was finding himself in, or they essentially failed to move the ball quickly enough to him, as one or the other. You can see from his heat map, because he played essentially as a central midfielder throughout the match, but he only managed 66 touches. Now, when you look at Man City, when Cancelo does this exact same thing, on the other side, he averages 90 to 100 touches. Now, again, Rico Lewis is a super young player just coming into the side and doing brilliantly well. But, if you're going to play him and you're going to utilise him in that space, then you need to give the ball to him quickly. And with City not really utilising the space Lewis was picking up, time and time again, it meant that it made Everton's job just that little bit easier in denying that left-hand side, because, again, when we've got that new formation, you've not got that overload in the same way that you normally do with Man City. And Everton were able to put a lot of emphasis on stopping Bernardo Silva and Grealish, that combination, by doubling up on them, with Onana and Iwobi doing the dirty work. Iwobi made 6 tackles and interceptions on the right side, and that was pivotal in breaking up the play of Man City and also stopped them from gaining momentum. And speaking of momentum, fancy having a look at it in bar form. Well, this tells a story as well in itself, because Man City, as we can see and as we always see, they had the lion's share of the ball and dominated in that sense. But the important thing to remember is that the bigger the bars are, the more significance to that attacking period. So in terms of it, creating a shot, creating a dangerous chance or not. And City, if you go through and look at their momentum bars, you can see that City normally have much higher bars, if that makes sense. And City only really put Everton under serious pressure 3 or 4 times in this match and didn't really impose themselves on them until late on the game, where Pep made a triple substitution in the 87th minute, which is another problem because it's another huge talking point. Because Pep seems to keep doing this. Why did Pep leave it so late? You've got Cancelo on the bench. You've got Gundogan on the bench. You can feel and see that there's a kind of lack of width there. Playing against the back five, you're just making life that little bit easier for them. And why did Pep leave it so late? Neither the system nor the personnel on the pitch were performing, so why leave it that late? I didn't really understand it. It was screaming for someone like Gundogan to make those smart, intelligent runs and get themselves a game, and also try and get themselves to the byline. The team selection stank of overthinking, and the late substitutions reeked of stubbornness, in my opinion. For Everton, this is a point which, it could save their season. It could be a starting point. It could be a platform. Because after losing in the 95th minute to relegation rivals Wolves, this could have been really ugly. Let's be honest, it could have. And if things went wrong and you got a 7-0 spanking, then, Lampard's in trouble, isn't he? But a draw against, a very special Man City side, it could perk them up, and it could continue to navigate them through a tough run of fixtures. And I know Godfrey went off at the end. I don't know how heavy the injury is there, but in a back three of Godfrey, Tarkowski and Cody, and then the fullbacks that they have, midfielders who can get around the pitch and are good technically as well, you start to look at that team and you go, oh, you're only one striker away or one attacking player away. I think that setup is something they should run with for a good few weeks. Right down the bottom of the table. No, it's not Fulham, because they're absolutely flying. It's Southampton, rock bottom, 2-1 losers away to Fulham at Craven Cottage, 1.52 XG to 0.86. And let's start off with Fulham, because Fulham are becoming unstoppable. Silva is one of the managers of the season, in my opinion, and Fulham now sit in 7th place after their win over the weekend. This means they're now above Chelsea in the league, and they're within touching distance of 6th place Liverpool, which is incredible when you think about Fulham and where we thought they would be at the start of the season. Everyone putting them down the bottom because that's what we'd seen before. And their league position it's more than warranted. With the side playing a really open brand of football, which troubles the opposition for the whole game, and how many attacking chances they create for themselves, they should be buzzing. They should be so sort of proud of themselves because it's exciting football, but they've got a lovely mix of physicality as well as quality and width and optimism, right? But we already knew this about Fulham. So what did we learn from this game? Well, we learned something different, because they can be good in an attacking sense. We've seen that from prior to the World Cup. But this game is important because it showed that they are more than just a likeable attacking team who the neutrals can latch onto. 2 goals from training ground corners gave them the victory in this one. And I think that speaks volumes, because it shows how multi-dimensional they are and how they can score goals from different ways. And they are a threat in terms of how difficult they are to deal with defensively. Fulham have now got 9 set-piece goals this season. Only one team's got more, that's Spurs, and we'll talk about Spurs a little bit later on. But the interesting thing here is that they've scored 9 of those goals from set-pieces from an XG of 5.19. So this is because of a couple of variables. So first, it's that the players are just so up for it and they ensure that they're first to every ball. But that only gets you so far. The way they set up and how well versed they are, especially from corners, that is a sign of a team that are being superbly coached and they're buying into Marco Silva's style, especially to have a team that's doing so well in terms of set pieces, but also doing so well in open play. I think it just speaks absolute volumes. They've done so well. And another factor of Fulham that makes them pretty scary this season is how energetic they are and how sustained they are throughout the 90 minutes and how they can take it up a gear even late on when they're needing a goal. And that there's a lot to admire about Fulham this season. They're playing with a big team energy, and how they approach matches is just really good fun. They're playing with the same philosophy and in every single game, and they're always playing to win rather than to lose. And their mentality and approach is what has seen them set them apart, really, in terms of other mid-table teams this season. For Southampton, it's worrying time. Southampton fans, let me know how you're feeling in the comments down below, because it's the same problems for Southampton, who look like they are, and this is what teams that get relegated do, they're conceding late. The best teams score late, the worst teams concede late. And looking at the game, I don't really know what Nathan Jones was trying to do in this match. I feel like he was sort of tinkering a little bit too much. He's trying to find an answer. He hasn't really got a true understanding of what could get them where they want to be at this moment in time. And maybe that come and change with different games. But during this game, he sort of moved players about a bit too much, which messed with the structure of the team to an extent. And you had a midfield double pivot of Elyounoussi and Ward-Prowse, which is something I never thought I'd see. You've got Lavia, who's back, I assume, and I assume that he walks back into this team, into that double pivot when fully fit. But still, it was an interesting midfield duo, but the lack of a goal scorer is what really hurts Southampton for me. Shea Adams is their top scorer with 4 goals so far, but without a genuine finisher, I think it means they often don't take their chances when it's presented to them, and game state's so crucial. You need something to hang on to make you to defend that little bit more instead of getting that little bit more tense. And this then often allows oppositions either back into matches or, in this case, going on and winning it. Nottingham Forest 1, Chelsea 1, 1.43 to 0.94. Before we dive into this, if you are new to the channel, make sure you hit subscribe and the notification bell. And also, if you haven't checked out the video where I'm building the greatest Premier League squad of all time. That video dropped on the channel yesterday. A lot of people are really enjoying it. I'd love to see your squad, so go and check out that video. Back to Nottingham Forest against Chelsea, and you had an energetic Forest who were too much for what looked like a really tired Chelsea. Steve Cooper got his tactics spot on against Chelsea. Forest made it very hard for Chelsea to create chances, and that has to be a huge worry for Graham Potter, who has built his reputation off of the back of when it comes to creating chances and having a high XG. But in this match, Chelsea were miles off it, and that came down to a few factors. So we're talking about Chelsea's problems. Chelsea fans who watched this match will have been so frustrated with their side as they look completely lost in the final third. And they failed to create anything meaningful in terms of chances, apart from their goal, which came from a fortunate Forest mistake. The average positions of Chelsea highlight some of the problems as well, because we've already discussed how important Gabriel Martinelli was earlier in the video, talking about Arsenal and how he stretched the play and he was always pulling defenders behind him or making them nervous. Chelsea have none of that. All of the players want the ball to feet, and subsequently, this makes it really easy for Forest, because ultimately, if the ball's in front of you, they haven't scored yet, and especially for Forest's central defenders who had it all in front of them, it's just an easier life. The lack of penetration in behind from Chelsea, it also allowed Forest to be brave in the second half and go after the game. And whilst Chelsea controlled the game, they didn't really have that firm grasp on it, and it allowed Forest back into it. With the technical talent that Chelsea have, the fact that Graham Potter is failing to get a tune out of them creatively, most importantly, it's got to be super worrying. Something doesn't feel right there at all, does it? The lack of ideas Chelsea had when it came to creating chances also filtered down through the team, because it slowed the tempo down, and it often meant that they were often caught in turnover scenarios. Forest had 4 counter-attacks in this match, and also 4 shots which came directly from counter-attacks. And with Chelsea seemingly taking an aggressive approach in the transfer window in January, it looks like they're kind of glossing over the glaring fact that they just need a number 9 who's capable of testing defences both in behind but also to feet. They're just sort of clogged up in front of the opposition a lot of the time, and they're in the middle of completing the Nkunku deal, which is it's a good signing. It's again another player who wants the ball to feet. They're linked with João Felix, who is also more of the same. Chelsea are running a risk here of being just really one-dimensional and just overly stacked with players that they can't all fit in, and it makes it really easy to defend despite having world-class forwards. Having said that, Nottingham Forest deserve huge credit, and when they've gone behind in their previous 11 matches, they've gone on to lose the match. But this one, of course, they didn't, and they showed in this match why they were right to back Steve Cooper with the tactical instructions that he set, alongside the fact that these players clearly love him. And the front three is an aspect I really, really enjoyed about the performance. You had Brennan Johnson and Awani playing as strikers, but picking up wide positions when out of possession, and it meant that Forest were able to counter-attack with pace and run at the slow Chelsea defence. And this was a problem for Chelsea that they never really addressed and naively allowed to happen over and over again, in my opinion. This was tactically very, very clever from Cooper. And another aspect of Forest that I think could help them stay up is that they're settling on a formation. They know what they want to do now. It's 4-3-3. It works well for their personnel and it gives them balance, particularly in the midfield with Freuler, Yates and Mangala offering different things whilst also being good out of possession and disrupting passing lanes as well against some of those better sides. The thing is that I like about them as well is that it was, and I know Forest fans weren't happy with the referee, but in terms of utilising the referee and breaking up play with small fouls, they did really well from that point of view. You know, they combined together to make 8 fouls in the match with only 1 booking being dished out. And that sounds like ugly stuff, but, you know, that's part of the game that we see right now. And they seem to be finding their feet as a team. They're leaning on the collective attributes of the players well, which is seeing them become a very strong side at home. And Forest are now undefeated in 6 of their last home matches in all competitions. That needs to continue if they're going to stay up. Now, when do you begin to question the manager? Tottenham fans, this one's about you, I'm afraid. Tottenham 0, Aston Villa 2, 0.66 XG to 1.03. Or is this down to the players? Talk to me, Tottenham fans, because you've got to be getting frustrated with the fact that you're watching every game and it's the same game. Tottenham have now conceded the first goal in their last 10 matches. This is the type of stat that it should be deemed unacceptable for a Conte team. You just don't see it. And especially with the lack of creativity that they're displaying down the other end, the question is, who do you blame? Many have suggested that this is down to lapses in concentration from Spurs without any real evidence to back it up. But the first goal in this match, it just perfectly demonstrated not 1, not 2, but 3 lapses in concentration. You got Lloris spilling a simple save. You got Romero standing still and Doherty ball watching. This screenshot shows all of this. Romero's caught flat-footed whilst Ollie Watkins is already on the move. Doherty is miles away from Buendia and it therefore fails to pick him up in the second phase, and it allows Villa to score what is a incredibly avoidable goal. And if you want to take it a little step further, neither Basuma or Brian Hill did enough to stop the initial shot from Douglas Luiz either. So there is clearly something seriously wrong throughout the squad, not just with 1 or 2 of the players. Look, if you want to be super kind, you could talk about the World Cup and Christmas time and loads of different games. But, you know, this is Tottenham. They play loads of games. They've been playing European football for a long time. And the defensive line of Spurs in this match was so disappointing. And again, it leans towards lapses in concentration. You've got Romero, who's already stepped up, Ben Davies, who steps up way too late, and Perisic, who's just stood there watching. It looks really individual and not cohesive at all, which is crazy when you think of Conte being in this job and being in this job for some time, you know. So on the question of who do we blame, like most things, it's probably a little bit of both, right? You got the first goal, it's come down to the players not being switched on and making schoolboy errors. But in that second screenshot, it has to be on the manager because this is something that should be perfected by now, you know, with endless training ground drills and practice. You know, what are they actually doing in training? I hate to even say that, but that's not acceptable because they look absent in attack and they look unorganised at the back. They've got enough quality to get past the sort of a struggling with confidence idea. It's an attitude, and it's the wrong one at this moment in time. Aston Villa, on the other hand, are the epitome of a well-drilled team who understand their roles and they know where they need to be and when to move. And Villa capitalised on lethargic play from Spurs for the second goal by pinching that ball from Harry Kane and proceeding to be incisive and purposeful with their possession. And if Spurs continue to concede goals like that, then they deserve to lose matches and they're not going to get anywhere near the Champions League. Does Moyes have to go? West Ham 0, Brentford 2, XG of 1.29 to 1.71. And it's an age-old question that we asked several times on the James and Flav for Now podcast. How many games in a row have you got to lose your job? Now, David Moyes went into this with an exciting squad, new personnel, depth and expectation. And they have struggled massively. Now, they weren't terrible in this game, but this was West Ham's 5th consecutive defeat in a row in the Premier League. How many more can he get away with before he would lose his job? And because it's starting to leave a sour taste in their fans' mouths, and I get that because there is quality there and they're expecting to be challenging and doing what Fulham are doing. But they just seem to lack what's the word? It's like ingenuity in their chance creation, alongside defensive frailties that have been there before. A telling statistic from this match is that West Ham had a total of 20 shots, but didn't actually create a single big chance. That shows that they don't really have any method behind their attack at this moment in time. And it feels like the forwards are just being told to go out there and just put a shift in rather than any specific tactical instructions or a cohesive approach. I know they've had problems with injuries at different times, and Paquetá is now back into the team, and that in time will hopefully help. But the use of Scamacca in particular, it's kind of annoying because he's being treated like this old-fashioned English target man because of his size, but that's never been what he's about. Despite being that giant, he's incredibly mobile and technical, and he's a player that you want playing on the shoulder or even in the channels and receiving the ball on the half-turn where he can utilise his shooting abilities because he loves to do that. But he's being told to drop deep and to win headers, which he can do, right? But that's not why they should have bought him. I mean, maybe that is why they bought him, but he's got so much more to his game. And when we look at the teams that do well, when they have complete forwards, they need to utilise them, because it gives you another player elsewhere. And the forwards all seem to be doing their own thing. And whilst they sometimes may produce good performances doing this every now and again, it just doesn't feel sustainable. And I think he's almost got too many options at this moment in time. And especially against a really well-drilled team like Brentford, what happened will happen. Brentford were excellent in this match, in fairness to them, because what they did brilliantly was they had a game plan of hitting West Ham in transitions and stretching them in behind. Josh Da Silva's goal was just a perfect example of this, and it was how Brentford used third man running to their advantage and due to having that extra man in midfield. And Ivan Toney had another brilliant game. Sadly, of course, scoring a goal, got the assist for Da Silva, but it was, of course, bittersweet for Brentford fans because he then got himself hurt, horrible leg injury, which I guess we'll be waiting to find out what the extent of. But it kind of goes back to the video which we did where we put forward a transfer for every single team in the January window, and we said that Brentford needed a target man regardless of the betting problems that Ivan Toney finds himself in and the suspension that he could have. And so that's become an even more viable shout. Go check out that video when you get a chance. I also thought Christian Norgard was just brilliant, his brilliant self yet again in this match. And he's going really under the radar of a lot of clubs. And I think you could see them getting some big, big money for them. The captain was repeatedly brilliant this season, and is probably Brentford's second most important player, I'd say. You got Toney, you got Norgard, because he's averaging 3.7 tackles and interceptions this season. He's the heartbeat of the team since returning from injury, and yeah, just a crucial player for them. And especially if someone like Toney is out for a long time and they have to just get around it, what's going to be crucial with Brentford is being direct, being smart, being good in set pieces, and being hard to beat down the other end of the pitch. But they're in a great place. They continue to surprise me. And to summarise, I think there were two big questions that came from this match. One, do West Ham stick with Moyes, despite flirting with relegation? And two, do Brentford need to break the bank this January to get a striker to keep this good form going?